Welcome back to my channel for a new Hasselblad episode. And you see here on the left hand side my Hasselblad X2D with newest firmware. That's important for what we are going to do in this video. And I have mounted the Hasselblad XCD 120mm macro lens, and also here we need the newest firmware. And what I want to review and play with in this video are the new extension tubes from Hasselblad. Here you see them. This is a 9mm extension tube. Hasselblad announced them some time back, but finally they found their way into my studio. And when I say they found their way, I have two of them. Because Hasselblad says we can combine them and get them together in this way, achieve an 18mm extension of the lens. And of course these tubes, these rings, they sit between the lens and the camera body. And I want to try them out with the macro lens, but I also want to try them out with the 90V and the 38V, because Hasselblad says they are basically compatible with any XCD lens you might want to pick. As a subject for my test shooting here in the studio, I have at the very end of the table toy pearls, and they look like this here. They can be arranged on a base plate, and then you can fix the shape by going over it with an iron. And I think they are a very colorful motif for what I'm trying to illustrate here in this video. So it will be a lot of fun. Fasten your seatbelts and enjoy the show. Some short housekeeping first. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and stay tuned on my content, and in this way support my channel. Many thanks for that. Now, what is an extension tube? So let's have a look again. So this is 9mm length here and extends the lens by 9mm, sitting between the lens and the camera body. And by the way, these ones here, if we look at them, they are made in China. So they are not made in Sweden, but they are for Hasselblad X-System and for the 907X. Now, what is the purpose of an extension tube if it sits between the camera body and the lens? Well, it's very simple. It actually helps you to reduce the minimum focusing distance, and in this way it will increase the maximum magnification. So we are going to mount this between the lens and the camera body. We will see that we can get closer to our subject in this way and achieve a higher magnification. That's what extension rings are doing. Of course, if we combine them, we have two of them here, as I said. We have 18mm, and the extension of 18mm will further decrease the minimum focusing distance and therefore further increase the maximum magnification. Now, there are shortcomings of extension tubes, because you might think, okay, then I get this from Hasselblad. I mount it, for instance, on one of my standard lenses, which is not made for macro, and then have in one lens a macro lens and a nice lens with 38mm. But that's not how it works, because the moment in time this is mounted between the lens and the camera body, you will lose the ability to focus at infinity. So this lens here will no longer be able to focus at infinity the moment in time I have the extension ring here on and this whole construct then mounted to the camera body. And Hasselblad explicitly makes this clear on their website in a footnote. If you have the extension tube mounted between camera body and lens, the camera is no longer able to focus at infinity. And then there is a more technical aspect which we need to take into account when working with extension tubes, and that's that the effective aperture might also change. Now, for me that's not so relevant here, so I will skip the technical part and will not overwhelm you with a lot of mathematical formulas, as I sometimes do, but you should at least know that the effective aperture will change if you mount an extension tube between the lens and the camera body, in addition to the effect that you will no longer be able to focus at infinity. If you order this 9mm extension tube from Hasselblad or from your favorite retailer, it will come in a nice box which looks like this. You see, this is original Hasselblad accessory and equipment, and it also comes in a nice pouch. Let me clean this up here to show you. So, and in this pouch you can actually transport the extension tube. And that's what you should do. So if we find out that, for instance, the 38V lens as a standard lens on an X2D camera body is an always-on lens, kind of almost, that this works very well and gets a super high magnification with this extension tube, then you can always mount your 38V on your X2D and have this in your backpack in this pouch. And in this way, if you come into a macro type situation, let's say you're walking, you're taking landscape pictures, but then you cross, some plants which are full of interesting insects, then you just unmount this lens, you mount the extension tube, you mount the whole thing back to the camera body, and you have your macro lens with you at all times. That's the purpose of this pouch here. Alright, so currently I have the 120mm macro on the X2D without any extension ring, and I want to shoot at an aperture of f5.6. We'll get, because this is a tele macro lens, a very shallow depth of field. I want to shoot in aperture priority, center weighted metering, a 2-second self-timer, and at a fixed ISO of 100. And I will use the autofocus because that is a macro lens which has autofocus. And you see currently the lens is not able to focus because I'm too close with my subject. There is focus hunting, but it doesn't find focus. So we have to move the subject a little bit away, which I'm going to do right now. All right, so I think we're almost there. I was moving the subject millimeter by millimeter away from the camera. Here we found now finally focus. Let's take that shot and let's see how it looks like with these colorful pearls here. And the focus field was sitting here, and this looks actually good. I think this is fine. Look here. I think I can live with that. What I actually should do is a focus stacking, and I might do it at the end of the video if I'm in a good mood, to give us more depth of field. But that's the way it is. Let's now unmount the macro lens and let's mount the extension ring. Now actually I will mount both extension tubes because the effect of an extension tube with a length of 9mm on a 120mm lens is pretty negligible. So we mount both extension tubes immediately and see how this plays out. So let's get this off here. All right, let's get the camera aside. So here we have the first extension ring. It's red on red. Here we have red. Here we have red. So this should fit here. And then we can screw it on until it snaps in. And then we have here red. We have here red. So we do the same game again. Okay. And it snaps in. All right. So this is how it looks like. You see the lens is now by 18mm extended. And this will decrease our minimum focusing distance and increase our maximum magnification. So let's get this mounted here. Red dot at 12 o'clock, simple on Hasselblad, and let's screw it on firmly. And let's see, this is the picture we have. It's also stored, I have it here, so it's on the Compact Flash Express Type B card. And let's now try to get this thing closer here, the subject, and let's see if we can still focus. Okay, so I've now already played that game with my subject and moved it millimeter by millimeter until I found the minimum focusing distance of the camera lens combination now with two 9mm extension tubes. And you see actually, here is the focus. I take the shot. And you will see now if we go into play mode that there is significantly more magnification with the two extension tubes. So let's have a look here. This is the image without extension tube, shot at minimum focusing distance, and this is the image with extension tube, shot again at the now changed minimum focusing distance, and that is quite remarkable, I would say. Look at that difference here. So this is as close as we could get without the tubes. This is how close we could get with the tubes. And as I said, extension tubes are typically less effectful on tele lenses than they are on normal focal length lenses. And here I think even on 120mm we achieved quite some additional magnification. I'll come to how much the magnification really is in an effective way in a moment. Okay, just a little bit theory. I promise it will be very short, but I really want to give you a flavor of how much can you boost the maximum magnification with an extension tube. And there is a very simple formula, and the formula works as follows. We look at M-max, and M-max is the maximum magnification of a lens. I come to 3 examples in a moment in the Hasselblad context. And then if I mount an extension tube of length A, and divided by the focal length then I come up to the new magnification of the lens. It's simple like that. So if we take, for instance, the maximum magnification of the Hasselblad 90V and we add 18 millimeter for 2 times 9 millimeter extension tubes and divide it by the focal length, which is 90 millimeter, then we get the new magnification of the camera extension tube lens combination. So let's look into the examples we discuss in this video. First, the Hasselblad XCD 3.5 120 macro. What are the numbers we have? I have the specifications from the Hasselblad website on the lower left-hand side corner. We have here, because this is already a macro lens, a maximum image scale of 1 divided by 2. So that's 0.5. Now go with me to the upper right-hand side corner. We have mounted the extension tubes, and that's all in 18 millimeter. We divided by the focal length and added to the maximum magnification of the lens natively of 0.5, we end up at the bottom right-hand side at a new maximum magnification of 0.65. So you see, in a tele lens, 120 millimeter, the boost of magnification by the extension tubes, and we combine two here with a total length of 18 millimeter, goes only, quote unquote, up from 0.5 to 0.65. But that's already, by the visual impression, a lot, as we will see a moment in the sample images. Let's make our second example. That's the Hasselblad XCD 2.5 90V. Here we have from the specifications a native maximum image scale of 1 divided by 5.8. That is, in decimals, 0.17. I'm now in the upper right-hand side corner. And now I have to add again the extension length, 18 millimeter, divided by the focal length, which is 90 millimeter. And if we add up the math, we come to a new maximum magnification of 0.37. Now here, the boost of magnification by extension tubes is significant, right? Before, on the 120 millimeter, we climbed up from 0.5 to 0.65. Now here at 90 millimeter, we climb up from 0.17 to 0.37. That is a much better situation for close-up shots, and it gets much better with the 38V. So here we have the Hasselblad XCD 2.5 38V, and here the maximum image scale or maximum magnification is 1 divided by 6.2. That's, I'm going to the upper right-hand side corner, 0.16. And now we do the same game. We add the extension, 18 millimeter, divided by the focal length, 38 millimeter. And now the new magnification at its max is 0.63. So we are here now in what we would call a true macro lens. So these two extension tubes of 2 times 9 makes 18 millimeter boost up maximum magnification of this combination from 0.16 to 0.63 and convert the former wide-angle lens Hasselblad 38V into a true macro lens with a maximum magnification of 63%. That is huge, right? And you get the pattern here. The shorter the focal length, the more effect will extension tubes have. And that means it's super convenient, as I described in the video before. Mount your 38V, enjoy the wide-angle landscape photography, what have you, but if you have a macro type situation crossing your way, mount the two extension tubes and turn your 38V into a fully fledged macro lens with a maximum magnification of 63 times or 63%. Simple like that. Last but not least, let's quickly look into the images I generated in the course of this video. So here's the first one. That's the 120 millimeter lens, and this is without extension tubes. And you also see here nicely the shallow depth of field. It's sharp here where the focus was sitting, but there's a lot of blurriness going on in that image where the focus is not sitting, because even at an f5.6, if you shoot with a 120 millimeter lens on a medium format sensor, you get a shallow depth of field. Mounting now the two extension tubes with 2 times 9 makes 18 millimeter, gets me much closer to my subject. And we saw the math before. So we climb up from a maximum magnification of 0.5 times to 0.65 times. And that's what you see here. Still sharp where the focus is sitting, a lot of blurriness based on a shallow depth of field, but much closer, higher magnification. I also did for this particular constellation a focus stacking. And you see here now, if you compare the two images, we have now increased the depth of field, and now a lot in the image is sharp and in focus, and this looks actually quite nice. I thought so when I decided for these little toy pearls that they make a nice colorful image. So that's based on focus stacking. What I was not expecting is the parameters in the Hasselblad X2D in order to get this done, and you see here a photo which I have taken from my parameters for this particular shooting. Here's now the XCD 90V, and here I wanted to do it in steps, mounting one extension tube and then later mounting the second one. So having first 9mm extension, which brings me as close as here. And here you see I have quite some distance based on a higher minimum focusing distance, but then the first extension tube brings me as close as this image here with a much higher magnification. And then I can boost this even further by mounting another extension tube, coming up with 18mm extension, and then I end up like here. So here I wanted to show you the effect. One extension tube plus second extension tube, and then we have quite some magnification here. And you saw before in the math how this is boosting the magnification based on the formula I showed. And then last but not least, we have here the true wide angle lens, the 38V. And here is the shot at the minimum focusing distance. And this time I mounted again 18mm as extension. And we saw before in the specs that these extension tubes with 18mm, they transform the 38V into a true macro lens. And from here, with the extensions mounted, boom, this is what we get. This is absolutely fantastic. Look at that. This is native shot at minimum focusing distance with maximum magnification as the lens natively has. And then here, this is with the extension tubes, and you have a true macro lens now in your hands. So I think the flexibility we get all in from these extension tubes is really, really cool. And I will now conclude the video. Alright, that's all I wanted to say and show. I hope you liked that video. It was entertaining, hopefully, and at the same time educational. So you can now make your own assessment whether you want to have these extension tubes. I think they are really worthwhile to have, and I would take them in a double pack because the effect you can achieve is so much bigger. More than 2 extension tubes is not possible, so 18mm is end of story, but that's already plenty. And if you have them in the little pouch I showed earlier in the video, you can carry them with you, and if you end up in a macro type situation, you have the possibility to shoot a close-up. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel, there's always more to come. Thanks for watching, stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.